Every year, countless older adults go in for their regular checkups, believing they're taking all the right steps to protect their health. But what if I told you that some of these very same tests could actually increase your chances of having a stroke almost overnight? Hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? You put your faith in your doctor. You follow every piece of advice. Yet hidden within modern medical routines are risks that often go unspoken, not mentioned on the news, not printed in the clinic pamphlets, and sometimes not even explained by your physician. Picture this. You leave your annual exam feeling reassured, but just days later you're hit with dizziness, blurred vision, or even something far more serious. You're left wondering, what went wrong? Here's the reality. Certain diagnostic procedures, especially when repeated too often or done under the wrong conditions, can quietly spike your blood pressure, disrupt circulation, and trigger a chain of events that may end with a stroke. But don't panic. This video isn't meant to frighten you. It's meant to empower you, to give you the right questions to ask, and to help you protect both yourself and those you care about. Because once you're past 60, healthcare isn't only about spotting problems early. It's also about steering clear of complications we may unknowingly create. In just a few moments, we'll reveal the 5 most common medical tests that may carry hidden stroke risks for seniors. Even more importantly, you'll learn how to stay safe before your next doctor's visit. If you're over 60, type 1 in the comments. If you're younger, type 0. And don't forget to subscribe to Everyday Health Pro, where we share the health truths most people never hear about. Now, let's dive into the first test you may want to approach with caution. If you've ever had a CT scan with contrast, you probably recall that sudden warm sensation spreading through your body. That's the contrast dye at work, helping your doctor get a clearer look at your blood vessels, tissues, and organs. Seems useful, right? But here's what many seniors are never warned about. That quick injection does more than sharpen images. It can place hidden stress on your heart and blood vessels, especially if you're over 60 and already managing high blood pressure, heart disease, or kidney concerns. For some people, the contrast dye sets off a vasovagal response, a rapid drop in heart rate and blood pressure that may cause dizziness, nausea, fainting, or even a short blackout. But in other cases, the exact opposite happens. Blood pressure surges, and delicate blood vessels may tighten or spasm. When that occurs, the risk of a stroke or heart complication rises quietly in the background. In fact, research published in the Journal of Vascular and Interventional Radiology found that seniors undergoing contrast-enhanced CT scans faced a noticeably higher rate of vascular side effects. Research shows that within just 72 hours, complications are far more likely to appear, particularly in people with high blood pressure, heart disease, or reduced kidney function. In short, the more fragile your system, the more dangerous that contrast dye may become. Let me give you a real example. An 81-year-old man went in for a routine abdominal CT scan after some mild digestive issues. The scan looked completely normal, and he went home feeling reassured. But only 2 days later, he suffered a minor stroke. The most probable cause? That contrast injection may have temporarily spiked his blood pressure, leading to a clot that blocked blood flow in part of his brain. Now, this doesn't mean CT scans with contrast are bad. Far from it. They're powerful tools that can detect cancers, clots, aneurysms, and other life-threatening conditions. But the important point is this. These scans should be used thoughtfully, not just ordered during a routine visit, just in case. So how can you protect yourself before saying yes to a contrast CT? Start by asking your doctor, is this scan truly necessary, or is there a safer alternative for someone my age and condition? Be upfront about your entire medical history, especially if you deal with high blood pressure, kidney problems, heart conditions, past reactions to contrast dye, or are on certain medications. And don't hesitate to ask, can we do this without contrast? In many cases, a non-contrast CT or even an ultrasound may provide enough detail without the extra risk. Now, moving on to the next test, one that many seniors take even when they feel completely healthy, but which may not be as harmless as it seems. Let's talk about the stress test, also known as the exercise stress test. On the surface, It sounds logical. Hook up to a heart monitor, walk on a treadmill, and measure how your heart responds to exertion. But here's the catch. If you're over 60, especially if you already live with high blood pressure or heart disease, this seemingly simple test could turn risky. Why? Because during the test, you're asked to walk or jog as the treadmill speed ramps up. This pushes your heart rate higher, raises your blood pressure, and puts your cardiovascular system under sudden heavy strain. For someone in their 30s with no issues, this isn't a big deal. But for older adults with existing conditions, it can be like striking a match in a dry forest, potentially triggering dangerous consequences. The risks? Rapid blood pressure spikes, irregular heart rhythms, sudden arrhythmias, and in rare but serious cases, tiny tears in delicate blood vessels, including those in the brain. In fact, a 2020 study published in the American Journal of Cardiology examined over 1,300 patients above the age of 65 who underwent treadmill stress testing. The findings? Nearly 7% of them experienced harmful events during the test. During those treadmill stress tests, the most common issues included sudden spikes in blood pressure and irregular heart rhythms. And who faced the greatest risk? People who already had vascular problems to begin with. And this isn't just something written in a medical journal. It happens in real life. One of our viewers, Margaret from Ohio, shared her story with us. She's 74 and has managed high blood pressure for years. Her doctor suggested a stress test just to check how her heart was doing. But halfway through the treadmill portion, she started feeling lightheaded and noticed tightness in her chest. The test was stopped right away, but the very next day, she suffered a minor stroke. Doctors explained that a sharp rise in her blood pressure during the test may have ruptured a tiny vessel in her brain. Now, to be clear, the test itself didn't directly cause the stroke, but it did put sudden strain on an already fragile system, and that was enough to tip the balance. So what's the lesson here? Always have an open conversation with your doctor. Ask, is there a safer way to check my heart health? For many seniors, alternatives like a nuclear stress test, which uses medication to mimic the effects of exercise, or a resting echocardiogram can be less risky options. And if you're not dealing with symptoms like chest pain, breathlessness, or unusual fatigue, it's worth asking whether the test is even needed right now, or if it can safely be postponed. Next up, let's take a closer look at another common procedure that often seems routine, but can carry hidden risks, especially if you're not careful. We're talking about the endoscopy. By the time you're past 60, this procedure becomes almost standard, whether it's for examining your esophagus, stomach, or colon. Doctors often suggest it just to be safe, and sometimes, yes, it's necessary. But here's the part rarely discussed. If the procedure isn't truly needed, and especially if sedation is involved, the risks may outweigh the benefits. Here's why. Most people over 60 are on at least one medication, often blood thinners like aspirin, warfarin, or Plavix. During a sedated endoscopy, your blood pressure and circulation naturally shift. Mix that with medications that interfere with blood clotting, and suddenly the chances of internal bleeding rise, along with the risk of impaired blood flow in the brain that could lead to a silent stroke. A 2021 large-scale study published in Gastrointestinal Endoscopy found that patients over 65 who had sedated endoscopies faced a significant increase in transient ischemic attacks, or TIAs, commonly called mini-strokes, within 72 hours after the procedure. Now, these weren't full strokes, but they were clear warning signals that blood flow to the brain had been disrupted. One case I'll never forget involved a 76-year-old woman who went in for a routine colonoscopy with sedation. She was completely symptom-free beforehand, but just 2 days later, she developed slurred speech and trouble with coordination. At the ER, doctors confirmed she had suffered a mild stroke. Doctors believed that in this case, the drop in blood pressure caused by sedation, combined with her daily use of aspirin, may have created the perfect conditions for a clot to form and travel. Even though endoscopy itself is generally considered safe, when you mix sedation, age, and medications, the risk can quietly multiply. Now, this doesn't mean you should avoid endoscopies altogether. They can be essential and sometimes life-saving. but it does mean you should never agree to one unless your doctor can clearly explain why it's necessary right now. If the only reason is that it's been a few years, ask whether there's a safer alternative, especially if you don't have any active symptoms. Always go into these discussions prepared. Remind your doctor about every medication you're taking. Ask, do I need to stop my blood thinner beforehand? And what are the sedation risks for someone my age, with my health history? If you're uneasy about sedation, it's worth asking if the procedure can be done without it, or with a lighter form that reduces the strain on your system. Now, let's move on to another test that doesn't get talked about nearly as much, but it's one that can affect something many people don't think about until there's a problem: the kidneys. MRIs are incredibly valuable. They allow doctors to see detailed images inside your body, detect problems early, and in many cases, help you avoid unnecessary surgeries. But the situation changes when contrast dye is added. That's when caution becomes crucial, particularly for older adults, and especially for anyone with even mild kidney problems. Here's why. The contrast dye used in MRIs often contains gadolinium, a heavy metal. Normally, your kidneys filter it out and flush it away. But as we age, kidney function naturally declines. And if you already have chronic kidney disease or reduced kidney performance that hasn't been diagnosed yet, your body may struggle to clear the gadolinium effectively. That means small amounts can remain behind, and that buildup can be dangerous. Retained gadolinium has been tied to a rare but serious condition called nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, NSF, where skin and connective tissue become thick and rigid. In advanced cases, this can interfere with movement, restrict breathing, and even lead to organ problems. But here's something even less widely known. Gadolinium deposits have also been discovered in brain tissue. Some researchers suspect this may contribute to subtle neurological effects like dizziness, confusion, or disorientation, especially in people already dealing with circulatory challenges. A 2019 study published in Radiology followed more than 2,000 patients over 65 who underwent contrast MRIs. Within a week of the scan, about 5% reported stroke-like symptoms such as blurred vision, balance issues, and headaches. These weren't major strokes, but they were clear warning signals. And in most cases, the patients also had underlying kidney impairment, whether diagnosed or not. Take Harold, a 79-year-old veteran from Arizona. He went in for an MRI because of persistent back pain. His doctor ordered it with contrast, just to be thorough. What Harold didn't know was that his kidneys were already weakened. 2 days after the scan, he began feeling lightheaded, weak, and mentally foggy. Those symptoms lasted almost a week. When his primary doctor finally ran some blood tests, they discovered he had stage 3 kidney disease. Harold told us, "No one warned me. If I'd known, I would have asked more questions." So what can you do if you're in a similar situation? If your doctor recommends a contrast MRI, ask, can this be done without the contrast? In many cases, the answer is yes. And if contrast is truly necessary, insist on a kidney function test first. It's a simple blood test called a GFR, and it provides both you and your doctor peace of mind. Also, always let your doctor know if you've had unusual reactions to imaging tests in the past. Remember, the MRI itself isn't the problem. The risk comes from the extra chemical that your body might not process properly. With the right precautions, you can still get the answers you need, without putting your kidneys or your brain at unnecessary risk. Now let's shift to another test that sounds safe, even smart to repeat regularly. But in reality, it may be pushing older adults toward risky surgeries they never truly needed: the carotid artery ultrasound. This test is quick, painless, non-invasive, and doesn't involve needles, dyes, or noisy machines. On the surface, it sounds like the perfect preventive scan. But here's what most people over 60 don't realize. If you don't have symptoms and your doctor orders this test just to check, it could set you on a path towards surgery that wasn't needed in the first place. The carotid arteries are the main blood vessels that supply blood to your brain. Like other arteries in the body, they can slowly build up plaque, deposits of cholesterol or calcium. That's a natural part of aging. But here's the key: not all plaque needs to be removed. In fact, in many cases, it's far safer to watch and manage it with lifestyle changes than to operate. So where do things go wrong? Imagine you take the test and it shows 50% or 60% narrowing. That number sounds alarming, so you're referred to a vascular surgeon. Suddenly, you're hearing about procedures like a carotid endarterectomy or a stent. But here's the catch. If you haven't had any symptoms, no dizziness, no sudden vision problems, no weakness on one side of the body, those procedures might not provide much benefit at all. And they come with very real risks. In fact, a large study published in the New England Journal of Medicine followed more than 3,000 seniors with moderate carotid narrowing but no symptoms. The results were clear. Surgery often didn't lower stroke risk any more than medication and lifestyle changes. Even more concerning, a small percentage of patients actually suffered strokes directly from the procedure itself, either during surgery or while recovering afterward. SS. One story that truly hits hard comes from Helen, an 82-year-old from Pennsylvania. She went in for a routine checkup feeling perfectly fine. Her doctor ordered a carotid ultrasound just to be thorough. The scan showed 65% narrowing, and within weeks she was scheduled for surgery. Tragically, during the operation, Helen suffered a small stroke. She survived, but now lives with partial weakness on her right side. As she told us, "I wish I had known that sometimes doing nothing might have been the safer choice." So what should you do if your doctor suggests a carotid ultrasound when you have no symptoms? Start by asking, what exactly are we trying to find? And if we do find something, how will that change my care? It's important to know whether the scan will truly alter your treatment plan or simply add unnecessary worry. If you're already managing your blood pressure, taking cholesterol medication, and following a healthy lifestyle, additional tests might not actually make a difference. And if you have already had a scan that showed some narrowing, don't panic. Instead, ask about regular follow-up scans instead of rushing straight into surgery. And always get a second opinion before agreeing to any vascular procedure. Now let's close with some encouragement and a gentle reminder. Your health is in your hands. The truth is, not every test is dangerous, but not every test is necessary either, especially after 60. As we age, our bodies respond differently. Something that looks routine, a contrast dye, a sedative, a quick scan, can create ripple effects we don't always expect. A simple injection might raise your blood pressure. A scan could trigger an unwanted reaction. Even a just-in-case checkup can carry risks if your system is already vulnerable. That's why it's so important to pause, ask questions, and make sure every test is right for you, not just a box on a checklist. You have the right to speak up, to ask, is this test truly essential? To say, can we consider a safer alternative? Because informed choices lead to safer outcomes and peace of mind. Your health story matters. Your voice matters. And here at Everyday Health Pro, we believe that every decision should be guided by knowledge, not fear and not routine. If you've ever felt off after a scan or test, or watched someone you care about go through something unexpected, drop a 1 in the comments. If not, share a 0. Let's learn from each other's experiences. And if this video gave you more awareness, more confidence, or even just sparked curiosity, don't forget to subscribe to Everyday Health Pro. We're here to uncover the truths others don't talk about, ask the tough questions, and always put your well-being first.